Representative Kim.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Dr. Cooper, I'd like to start with you. You said something that, I guess I kind of missed it when I read through your testimony, but you said it really stuck out to me. If I get this right, you're saying that right now about only 1.3% of global websites are Chinese language websites, and that's down from 4.3 before about a decade ago. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So, just so I get this right, you're not just talking about what the Chinese people have access to. You're just saying like they're actually being deleted from just writ large in the internet across the world. So it's not just about censorship within China, but it's being deleted and in many ways removed from all of us to be able to access. Is that correct?
That's exactly right.
Yeah, thank you for that. I thought that was a really interesting another component of this, not just about what the Chinese people are accessing, but just just the richness of what we hoped is in the internet for all. I wanted to try to. I guess, Dr. Cooper, maybe I'll start with you. I guess I'm just trying to get a sense of like, how does someone understand or measure how much of the internet is being restricted, or how much, it's hard for me to really conceptualize, what all is actually being restricted from the Chinese people through this action by the CCP. Do you have an understanding of how to process that?
Well, my fellow panelists may have other views on this, but I think there are a lot of tools that you can use to look at different elements of this. So one, for example, the Open Technology Fund helps to support is on app censorship. And you can go on and you can literally see on the Google Play Store, on the Apple App Store, what is censored. And it is a tremendous amount of stuff. And it's many of the apps that not only Americans use all the time, but that others around the world use. So I think it's going to differ from domain to domain. But it is a tremendous amount, not just on the internet, but also these other tools that people use to access information.
Yeah. I want to just pivot and just kind of focus in on something that's been kind of touched upon, but just, we're on the advent of this new era of innovation with AI. It's been referenced in different ways, but I'd like to dig in a little deeper. Mr. Kretschm, I thought you had a really powerful diagram on page 3, really showing the concentric circles here of some of this. Helps me understand this. I mean, some of my concern is that when we look at, large language models and what we've seen so far with AI, what we see if this trend continues is honestly a lot of users having less direct access to websites and a lot more information being, put together and assembled for them. And in some ways, I worry that kind of falls into that CCP-controlled domestic platforms area, if they're able to develop that kind of thing that I think Mr. Shao was worried about on that front. So I guess, I see this as sort of double-edged, and I'd like to, I'll turn to you, Mr. Shao, afterwards to talk about what kind of threats that could pose to the CCP. But, I'd love to just start with you, Mr. Kretschm. Just is this going to make things potentially much, much worse in terms of the ability to censor?
Absolutely. I mean, the really kind of pernicious, for me, kind of the most dystopian part about the way that the CCP has set up its information control regime is just how self-reinforcing it is and how it really does create kind of like, interestingly, memory holes. To your point about a shrinking internet, there's just fewer sources where those things can be found. So when you've taken people, initially when it was just like, oh, we'll censor websites we don't agree with, new websites will pop up. That's a cat and mouse game that can be played from both sides. Once people are sequestered into platforms that can be much more easily controlled by the CCP, all of a sudden, everything you see kind of reinforces a central narrative, and it becomes really hard because everyone's subject to the same controls to say anything different. Then, as you say, as large language models take over in the way that we have answers curated for us, if those large language models are trained only on censored data or data that has those memory holes well ingrained in them, then anything that model
they don't have to be reactionary in that way. They're actually just removing that from the knowledge base of the large language models. And
precisely.
Mr. Shao, I guess you had mentioned that AI tools could be a threat to the CCP. I think you were saying maybe because their large language models might not be able to do all that people want it to do because it's going to have a limited amount of info. But I'd love for you to just explore that a little bit more for us here.
Yeah, let me give you give you an example. China actually is the only other country
has a tech ability of the AI that developing those large language model. So as Mr. Congressman said, that is a parallel universe. The Chinese users are using Chinese model. The difference is they are trained by different data and also under the different supervised training, which is in China, the sensor will just monitoring the outcomes, right? But there's a difference between the two models if you train differently and by different data, and why those differences are so crucial. And because AI is so vast, and it answers any common sense questions. I'll give you an example. What's the patriotism? What's love the country, right? Hey, that's the AI, if you use the open AI chat GPT, will tell you the answer you love the country. It's different than love your government. It's different than the state. Yeah, it's different than love your culture. But if you use the Chinese under the PRC propaganda materials trained, the crucial point, every day they're trying to confusing people's mind is, love China equals love Chinese Communist Party, equals love Chinese culture, equals Chinese people. They lump them together. Logically, it doesn't make any sense. Yeah. But they use whole propaganda and censorship to make that only available in the Chinese language space. And Chinese AI will just answer that.
Yeah.
But the
my
outside of
time's
that,
come to a close, so I'll yield on back, but I think that's an important thing for this committee to explore.
Thank you. Mr.